You're watching a More Beautiful World podcast with Susan Renee, a channel for those of you with open minds and courageous hearts who are looking for guidance on your trauma healing and personal transformation journeys. Here, I share with you the powers of intentional plant medicine use, along with other holistic therapies and spiritual guidance to guide you on your path forward. I'm so eager to share with you what I've learned in working with these sacred plant medicines on my own journey, including the knowing that what we do to heal ourselves, we do to heal the whole collective. Join me as I share my experiences, knowledge, and wisdom to guide your trauma healing so you can transform your life, and so that together we can create the more beautiful world we all know is possible. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of A More Beautiful World. In this episode, I'm going to share with you a story along with some insights I received from my first Sweat Lodge experience. And oh boy, was it an experience. I'm sharing this with you to give you some firsthand knowledge of what it's like to go through a transformational ceremony and to share with you what can come up during one of these transformational ceremonies, as well as to really help you know how to best prepare for and navigate through a ceremony experience. I certainly had many surprises come up during this Sweat Lodge, and I learned a lot about myself and about these types of ceremonies. And I was also deeply, deeply humbled by the entire experience. So if you are eager to hear about what a Sweat Lodge experience is like, or how a transformational ceremony experience like this could unfold for you, or even if you're just ready to hear some insights that I gained from this experience, then this episode is for you. A quick ask before we dive into the episode: if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please drop me in a rating or review. I would love so much to know what you think of this podcast, what you think of this episode. And remember, your support and your rating of this podcast helps me to get all of these messages that I share out to the world. And also make sure to follow the pod while you're there. And of course, if you are one of those watching me on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, make sure that you like this video and subscribe for more. So, my first Sweat Lodge experience. This was quite the journey, my friends. And today I'm going to do something a little different than I usually do in these episodes. And I'm actually going to be reading several pages from my journal where I captured this experience the day after the ceremony. So ceremony was a Saturday evening, and it was Sunday where I actually journaled out 7.5 pages in this very big journal. To really just help me process, because it was a doozy of an experience. And because I feel like I captured it so well there, I really wanted to give you all an uncensored view into my experience. You know, I do that a lot with my plant medicine journeys. And so it felt very fitting to share the experience again with you when it was captured so fresh, as I was still processing what happened and transpired in ceremony. So I'm going to read from my journal for you and kind of take you through how I connected into the ceremony, what the experience was like, and how I felt and what was showing up during the experience. But then at the end, I also, after I read the journal, I want to go in and share with you the insights that have unfolded. So also, a little disclaimer: normally when I have big transformational experiences, I will give you all, I will wait some time before I record, because I want to have a lot of time from integration. But this really was such a profound experience, and I am recording this just a few days after the experience. It was so profound that I wanted to make sure I captured what the experience was like as soon as possible. So With that, I'm going to do some reading from my journal, and afterwards, we'll go through some of the insights that came up, which are also kind of woven into the journal entry. So here we go, my friends. This is from my journal, again, capturing the day after, what the ceremony was like for me. So, several months ago, I connected with a man named Ken through my Fit for Service group who told me about his frequent sweat lodges and the ceremonies they conducted out here in Westminster, Colorado. I'd connected with him a few times and I had tried to make the sweat lodge happen, though the timing had never really clicked. That had gone on for a few months. But then the other day, when David and I were discussing what we were going to do for our weekend, he asked about the sweat lodges and if they were having one this weekend. When I checked in with my friend Ken, sure enough, they were going to have a sweat on Saturday. And after a short debate that Saturday morning, we decided to join the sweat lodge that evening. So, to prepare, I wasn't given too much information. We were told to go get some tobacco to bring as an offering for the sweat lodge, and we were told to bring some clothes for ceremony and some towels, and to make sure to stay hydrated. And I wasn't really given many other instructions on what to prepare for and what to expect, which of course made me have some anxiety. I had some anxiety about that and not knowing all of what to expect, which I now know was warranted. We were to arrive to the sweat lodge in Westminster about 5 p.m., with the lodge starting at 6 p.m. As soon as we arrived, almost everyone seemed warm and welcoming, and there were a few folks that were a bit more quiet. However, everyone was kind. There was a big fire outside, and from what David shared, there was a big inipi, or sweat lodge, that we were going to sit in. It was the biggest one he had ever seen. I wasn't quite sure what that meant, though it was a beautiful structure. There were several folks who introduced themselves, and I was so grateful to meet a woman named Tess, who, when learning it was my first sweat, she showed me where we would be changing and gave me a rundown of the whole process. She also gave me a beautiful green sweat dress to wear for ceremony. Even after chatting with Tess and getting the overview of how everything was going to go, I was quite a bit nervous still. And to get through a little bit more anxiety, David and I did a hot bay session to drop in and ground. And it was during that time we chatted a bit more with Ken and connected with him more deeply. And then, just as it started to get really chilly out, as we were all doing our best to stay warm around the fire, we were ready to begin ceremony. I'll be honest. I don't understand all of what happened or transpired from that point up until I woke up today, meaning Sunday. And I've honestly been foggy all day, which was Sunday. Though I will do my best to capture the experiences, the details, and the feelings that I do remember from this wild, transformational sweat lodge experience. So when ceremony started that evening, the ceremonial chanupa pipes were loaded with tobacco and prayers and intentions. These were then used to pray to the 4 directions to open ceremony. After that process was complete, we all went into our separate men's and women's changing areas and got into our sweat clothes. Again, mine was a long green cotton tie-dyed type of dress that I was naked under, and it completely covered me except for a little bit on my forearms and my face. Once we changed into our ceremony clothes, we returned outside and got in 2 separate lines, 1 line for men and 1 line for women, in order to enter the lodge. So there was a special way to walk around the fire and enter as well as exit the lodge. The women were to go in first, and I was in this line of women kind of toward the end, and we entered the lodge, and I crawled on the ground, as it is a low ceiling in the lodge. I crawled all the way on the ground around to the far back corner. I was one of the farthest people away from the door, which came to bring me some challenges during the ceremony. Once all the women had entered, then the men came in. And two men were left outside to really bring in these super big hot stones that were put in the middle of the lodge to be used to produce the heat so we could actually sweat. With that, as they were outside the lodge, they started loading the stones that were in the fire. They were these super hot big stones, and they said they were going to place 7 stones inside the lodge. Well, about 30 or so stones later, they were finished. Now, a quick aside for you all from my journal. I will say, this experience was also happening in Colorado as a Arctic cold front was coming through. So I think when we started ceremony, it was around like 20, 25 degrees with a wind chill. So it was very cold outside, but wasn't cold in the sweat lodge. All those stones had a purpose. Okay, back to the journal. As all of this was happening, I wasn't sure what to expect, and I was definitely nervous. It was hard to even find a comfortable position to sit, and I was already getting quite warm with those rocks in the sweat lodge before the ceremony had even started, before they had even closed the door. The setup, as I understood it, was that there would be 4 rounds of sweating, and in between, they would open the door, and you'd get out, and you'd get to cool off and stretch, and then you would go back in for the next round. And I also thought that if I had needed to, that I could sneak out of the sweat lodge if things got too intense. Well, I was wrong on all accounts. I'm going to shorten some of these next experiences before I end up writing an entire novel here in my journal from this experience, but I do want to make sure I capture everything that transpired. So the first round begins. When they closed the door and it went to pitch black, I felt like I was a sardine stuck in a steaming hot can. And I was absolutely struck with terror. The whole intention of a sweat lodge ceremony is to pray, is to purify, is to spiritually awaken. And I was struggling just to keep my shit together. I did my best to distract myself by learning the medicine song chants and really trying to sing to distract myself. Though I was so overwhelmed with the heat and I felt like I was choking or drowning because as they were already having those hot rocks inside, they were adding water to them. So the steam felt like it was all over my face. It was going down my nose, down my throat, into my lungs, and created this choking and drowning sensation. I was doing my best to breathe. I was doing my best to surrender to the experience, though I kept getting hit with panic and severe anxiety. And I thought, no fucking way that I can make it through 4 of these songs 4 different times. Hell, I will be lucky if I even make it through this single round. The need and desire to scream kept coming up. And I was so at the threshold of screaming out for help. I couldn't shake it. I did my best, and I just tapped into David's strength as he was there in the lodge with me. I knew that his strength would help me get through. And I thought, wow, there are so many older, bigger, less fit people in this sweat lodge. And if they've done this countless times, surely I can make it through just 1 round. And just as the panic had elevated and my voice was right at that threshold of screaming out for help, and all the internal dialogue of all the what the fucks and the why did I choose this were getting louder and louder. Finally, the song ended and the sweat door opened. Talk about some fucking gratitude. The first cool draft of air filled me with the deepest, deepest of gratitude. And then as I was reveling in the fact that I felt like I could at least somewhat breathe again, whoosh, a huge wave of anxiety came back over me, knowing that it was time for me to either speak up and get the fuck out of this sweat lodge or go and try again for another round, an almost torturous round. Of course, my intense ass decided, well, it was only one song that they sang. They didn't sing 4 full songs. So I could do at least one more round, right? I could do at least one more song. So, of course, I decided to continue. Second round. So I think to myself, I am strong. I have all the essentials. I've got this. Well, the moment they again closed the door to the inipi, I somehow felt like it was darker, it was hotter, it was more cramped, and it was more uncomfortable than it had been the last time. And right at that moment, I knew I was in for an even bigger challenge. Of course, the heat grew really intense almost immediately, with our lodge leader pouring cup after cup of water on these rocks. And my body was all sorts of uncomfortable. I was too hot. I was too wet. I was choking too much. I could not breathe. And almost immediately, once again, there I was in full panic. I tried to pull my shit together. I was trying to sing. I was trying to tap into the prayers of these chants. And I was doing my best to breathe, to go into my own prayers. But all of these attempts were for naught because the fear and the panic were all consuming. Again, the urge to scream out for help was perpetuating. In the panic, I'm honestly not sure what I was doing or how I was acting or how I was even breathing. Because all of a sudden, during this powerful second round, the woman next to me started asking, "Are you okay?" I was so frozen and consumed by the fear. I had no response. I couldn't even make words. She asked again, "Are you okay?" And again, "Are you okay?" And I'm pretty sure it was when she touched my arm or my leg, I finally unfroze. I came out of the panic and I said, "I don't know." She told me to put the towel I had with me up to my mouth or over my head to help me breathe and encourage me that this round was almost over. And then, just as I didn't think I could bear it anymore, as I really was on the verge of a full mental break or a full panic attack, the song ended and the door opened. I remember screaming out as the song ended, "Door, door," as if that would help them open it faster. The next few moments are a complete haze. I really don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I was on the ground in the tightest position, in child's pose, trying to grasp and gasp for the cool air. My sisters around me started feathering me with a large feather to help cool me down, to help bring in the cool air from the door. Because again, of course, I was farthest from the door, farthest from getting that fresh air. And my dear sisters were there supporting me, feathering me, helping me get through this experience. The woman to my right, she was so kind. She placed her hand on my back and provided me so much reassurance. Although I still was questioning if I could make it through, the women around me kept checking on me and they kept asking if I was okay to continue. They were giving me so much love and so much encouragement that I could make it through, that I could do this. They even said that was an intense round. You did so great. You can do it. And at some point, when I was down in child's pose, gasping for air, trying to get any coolness into my body, I then burst into tears. and I began crying and weeping and even wailing. A part of me and a part of it really, I believe, was my own fear and my own panic and the anxiety being released. As I look back now, it was a panic attack. And all the other parts of me, all of the prayers, all of the emotions of all the others, being an empath was tough in there because I knew I was channeling a lot of others' emotions. But most of it, a lot of it, was my own emotions. It was everything that I was feeling amplified, feeling extra sensitive from the sweat, feeling like this panic, this fear had gone into a big release. And it was such a cathartic and necessary and a resetting experience, though it was painful. And I was hypersensitive and hyper emotional as again I laid on the ground and the cool ground, gasping for the cool air in child's pose. But this crying, this cathartic release really allowed me to let go of the fear. It helped me to release the anxiety and to really sink into a full surrender. I surrendered into the trust of this container, to trust in myself, to have the ability to make it through, and to tap more deeply into love, into faith, into the power of prayer. Because there was so much prayer happening around me. The intention of the ceremony is to pray and to have our prayers be heard by our ancestors. And it was this break, this emotional break, that helped me to tap back into the intentions of the sweat lodge ceremony. Now, in this break, in between rounds, people were also sharing their prayers. And one man had somehow woven a joke about fishing into his prayers. And that helped me to lighten up. It made me laugh. And it helped me let go of the fear, of the panic, and of the anxiety even further. It was at this time I was able to sit back up. And my dear sweat sister gave me a few additional pointers for how to make it through the next rounds. She told me I could turn around and put my face down near the floor and breathe near the edge of the inipi. She also told me I could cover my face and my head with the towel, and it really does help to breathe easier. And she said I can even reach back, reach against the wall for the cool earth at the bottom of the inipi wall. All of these were necessary tools that got me through and even to say yes to the next round. Into third round. I was unsure of what was going to transpire. I had been alleviated by the big emotional release, and I did decide to go into third round. And I went into that round with more peace, more strength, because of the surrender. I knew I had my toolkit ready. And I'm grateful to say that third round opened me up to an entirely different experience. It was in this round where I was able to find stillness, to find my strength. You know, even in the discomfort, I was able to find comfort. And this strength that I found in the depths of my being, regardless of all the exhaustion and the strain that was on my physical body, it got me through. So it was this round where I could finally meditate. I could finally pray. I felt in flow with the music. I felt in touch with the prayers. I felt connected to everyone. I felt present and so much more at peace with the entire experience. I also did keep my mouth covered with a towel nearly the entire round. And I also kept my fingers grounded into the earth behind me. And it was these two tools that my sister had shared that allowed me so much more to get through this round gracefully and to get into the next break and the next round. As third round closed and the door was open. During this next break, before our fourth and final round, I was so exhausted. I was craving the cool air in my lungs. And I was back down in child's pose, getting as much cool air as possible, knowing that cold air sinks, knowing that is where the coolest air was. I was so wishing that I had sat by the door. All I wanted was to be closer to the door, closer to the cool air. Although I did have quite a bit of gratitude during this break. Gratitude for the ease that had found me. Gratitude to make it through that round with so much more comfort, even amidst all the discomfort. And I also sunk so deeply into gratitude to connect into the prayers that resonated so deeply. As they resonated, tears moved through me a bit. And all of this helped me to get ready for finishing this ceremony, for going into another round of prayer with my brothers and sisters in the Sweat Lodge. Fourth round. Fourth round for me was similar to the third. There was so much more peace and ease now with my tools that I had had. And the fourth song during this fourth round, the fourth song was so much sweeter, so much more beautiful. And that also really brought in a gentle energy into my being during this round. In between the third and fourth round, David, in the ceremony break, he had sent prayers to me and for my protection, and I used those for strength. This gorgeous, sweet song that was resonating throughout the whole Inipi, connecting all of our prayers, helped me ground into the gentleness, to ground into the ease. I had my towel up over my mouth and I was breathing into it. I was grounding into our Pachamama, into the earth, along the wall behind me. And again, all of that got me through. I felt so much peace, was able to say my prayers, was able to join in this sweet song. And then I was so grateful when ceremony was over. When that door opened up and it was time to get out and close ceremony, because I was eager to get that big wet sweat dress off, to dry myself off, and to cool off. When ceremony ends, we are to leave the Inipi out to the left. And of course, because I'm slightly dyslexic, I went a touch to the right. That's where my sandals were. And I was not supposed to do that. Oops, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to. But as I went back around to the left, out the Inipi, we went inside back to our changing rooms. We changed out of our sweaty clothes and got dried off, put back on our many layers because we were going back outside, back around the fire to close ceremony. And to close the ceremony, those chanupas, those pipes that were loaded with sacred prayers, they were lit up and smoked so all of our intentions could go to spirit. After the circle was closed and ceremony ended, there was a whole round of hugs, like a big hug parade, with everyone sharing lots of gratitude and lots of love, although all of us quite eager to get on our way because it was chilly outside. But there was so much love shared, so much gratitude, and it really was a beautiful end to this ceremony that was happening in a snowstorm. The ceremony was difficult. It was physically challenging. And of course, this Arctic front was moving in. So after such a challenging experience, I then had to drive home. And I'll be honest, this might have been one of the most difficult parts of the whole ceremony experience. Because as the snowstorm had begun, the windshield on my car kept freezing up, and I was getting so frustrated. The problem was my eyes were sore and goopy and almost painful from the sweat lodge, and it was really hard to see. It was hard to see without the windshield freezing up. And I know David could tell I was struggling. But we made it home, and there was a wave of relief to just get home. We noshed on some fruit, some watermelon, some soup, and it reminded me of the end of an ayahuasca retreat when we get to have our soup. But I will say this felt more physically difficult than the night that I sat with the black vine in ayahuasca. I was so eager to shower, get some food, get some snuggles from David, and just go to bed. All in all, a humbling and intense experience for sure. So that is the end of my journal entry on my retreat experience. Thank you all for letting me read that, because again, I do feel like it captured it. So as you can probably tell from that journal share, it was so challenging. And the first two rounds, I literally now know, it was a PTSD trigger. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a second, but the next day when I did capture, this experience in my journal, I could tell that my nervous system had really gone through a full cycle of fight or flight, and freeze. And I was exhausted from the charge that had moved through it from the PTSD triggers. And so I took Sunday as a very slow, a very gentle day, full of a lot of self-care. And I had some weird energy on that day I was trying to really move through. But when I finally was able to capture the experience, it was incredibly healing and helpful to move that energy. And what had really come in as some insights after my journaling experience was the fact that in childhood, I almost drowned a couple of times. And I know those first two rounds where I felt like I was drowning and I was choking and I was stuck, like I was stuck in the sweat lodge and it felt like I was stuck underwater. That was a huge trauma trigger for me. And I'll be honest, I don't think much about those experiences of almost drowning. But I could see the connection, as I journaled it out and realized what the experience really was like for me. I realized that I had a huge trauma trigger and that triggered me into full panic, into the full fight, flight, or freeze. And it was that emotional release after second round where the whole charge just moved through my nervous system. So with that, let me share some of the insights that came. So again, I've only been in integration a few days because today is a Wednesday and that experience happened just last Saturday and I captured the journal on a Sunday. So I'm only a few days into integration and normally, as you all know, I would wait a while to share and wait to kind of move through more integration time. But this was such a profound experience that I wanted to capture it and just record the episode as soon as possible. So maybe I'll have a few more insights that come during this integration process. But here's what I have so far. And I do hope that some of this and this whole experience, becomes some medicine for you. First and foremost, I was so deeply humbled by this experience. I went in maybe a little arrogant, thinking, I've done plant medicine journeys. I've done some of these big psychedelic medicines. Those were really difficult, challenging experiences that I was able to make through. I'm still pretty young. I'm strong. I'm athletic. I'm fit. I'm spiritually fit. Right. And so, I went in thinking this was going to be a lot easier for me to get through. And literally in that moment, and even looking back now, this was one of the most difficult experiences of my life. So I do have such a deeper level of respect for these ceremonies, for these sweat lodges and the opportunities that they present for deeper levels of healing and transformation. Again, I never expected that the trauma that was still in my cells around drowning, as a child was going to come up. And I just couldn't have anticipated that. Didn't think an experience like this could even trigger something that deep inside of me. So that is insight number one. Number two, when we have traumatic lives and we have gone through traumatic experiences, we never know when trauma triggers are going to hit, right? We never know necessarily when a PTSD moment is going to surface. And this is something we need to remember when we're like on these journeys and doing the work, right? When we're showing up to do the work, because these journeys are not easy. It's called doing the work for a reason. And this journey, these transformational journeys, this trauma healing journey, it is not meant to be navigated alone. And on that point, I'm going to say the strength of tribe when you are on this journey is of utmost importance. There is absolutely no way that I could have gotten through this experience without two things. Number one, David being in that sweat lodge with me, with my partner there praying with me and sending me love and sending me prayers and praying for my protection, and being a beacon of strength for me. I honestly know I wouldn't have made it through without him. The second thing, the mystery woman who was sitting next to me, which I never got her name, sadly. But had she not been there sitting next to me, had it not been for, her guidance and even the women around me, all of their guidance, all of their strength, all of their love and kindness, I would have completely lost my shit in that lodge. I think it would have been an extreme, full-blown panic attack. I think I would have gone into hyperventilation mode. I probably could have had a chance of passing out. Like, without their love, their support, their tips, I would never have made it through. So on these journeys, having support, having your tribe, it's everything. And also in the integration time, of this experience, having David at my side has been instrumental, to be able to process and really unpackage what transpired for me, and to have his support in navigating the integration has been completely helpful. Like, I don't know if I would have had all of these insights had it not been, for him being with me. So I'll also say, as maybe kind of a final set of insights, when navigating journeys, it is so important to know how to self-care through these types of experiences. So I have a lot of knowledge of breath work, right? I have knowledge of grounding, knowledge, that my sister shared with me in the sweat experience. Without all of these abilities and the ability to meditate and pray, I never would have gotten through this experience. I would argue that and all of those kind of self-help tools and all of the things I have in my toolkit, those have helped me not only in this experience, but in all of my medicine journeys. So those are essential when you are navigating transformational journeys. Because on top of that, these tools have also helped me in the integration of this experience. Being able to do that journal entry and journal it out to identify the trauma trigger, to be able to expand my self-awareness after this experience and really understand where there is still healing work to do, and to create a plan of action, based on the knowledge that came up, right? So I can turn that into wisdom, right? To further guide my healing journey. All of those tools are so important and have served me so well in navigating this experience. So having, self-care tools, having, ceremony prep, ceremony navigation, integration tools, very important to get through these experiences. So I'm going to end there today. Again, I feel there will probably be some more insights that come from integrating this experience, and I will bring them to you, weaving them into future episodes, creating them into whole episodes, or maybe, just doing a follow up on some Sweat Lodge integration. But for today, for this episode, that's all I've got on my, experience, the story of my Sweat Lodge experience, the insights from my Sweat Lodge experience. And I really hope, and it is my intention in sharing this with you all, I hope that the story and the insights can really become knowledge and medicine for you. As you navigate forward through different transformational experiences, as you're going on your own trauma healing journey. So, okay, tribe, let's remember that this is all about making the world a more beautiful place, and that begins with you. Because as you better yourself and you move through your healing and your transformation journey, you do beautify our world. I hope you found this episode helpful, maybe even a bit entertaining, and I always appreciate you being on the healing journey with me. Remember, if you ever need support on your journey as you heal from trauma, or if you are integrating these transformational medicine journeys, make sure you grab your free clarity call with me below, because I would be so honored to guide you on your trauma healing and your personal transformation. But that is all for today, my dear tribe. Until next time, much love to you all. Hey tribe, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button below and then click subscribe so you catch future episodes. And remember, I've got lots of free resources for you to learn about the powers of intentional plant medicine use in order to support your trauma healing and personal transformation journey. So make sure you check them out in the description below and help in making this a more beautiful world for us all. Thanks again for tuning in, tribe. And until next time, much love to you all.